Congratulations! It's time to close on your new house. What comes next? Well, stick around, I'm about to tell you. Hey guys, Bobbie Ann here with Cry Like in Bryant, Arkansas, and today we are going to talk about closing for buyers and the entire process of closing from start to finish. Stick around to the end of the video because, as always, I've got some free stuff for you. Okay, in the buying process, we're going to cover things like escrow and title company responsibilities, lender responsibilities, real estate agent responsibilities, contingencies, protections for the buyer, protections for the mortgage company, requirements from the buyer, and the walkthrough and closing or settlement day. So we're going to cover all of that in this video. I want to start with a little bit of advice for buyers during the closing process. My advice would be to stay organized and stay on top of things, stay ahead of the game. One way to do that is to hire a real estate agent, and I'm not saying this as a real estate agent, I'm giving you this tip as genuine advice because during the closing process, there are many timelines and deadlines that you have to stick with. The inspection and the amount of time that you're given to get a mortgage, those are timelines that have to be met. And a lot of times in contingencies and in the negotiations, you'll have timelines that you have to meet in order to stay within contract. So it's very, very important that you stay organized and stay on top of these deadlines because that can make a contract null and void if you were to get without of those parameters of the contract. A real estate agent is trained to stay on top of those things and help you and guide you. If you don't have a real estate agent, my tip and advice for you would be to get yourself familiar with those processes and steps that you need, and I will cover those, but just stay organized and stay on top of all that. That way you won't run into any issues later on down the line in the closing process. A common question that I have asked is, how long does closing last, and how long does it take before I am able to move into my home? Well, depending upon your situation, closings and the time that it takes to close may vary. A typical closing is from 30 days to 40 days or longer, depending upon, again, the situation. So closing starts the day that the offer is accepted, and there are so many events that take place between the acceptance of the offer and the signing day or settlement day that you actually get your keys and the transaction is complete. If everything goes smooth and is going along as expected, then it'll go quicker. But if there's a hiccup in the process anywhere, then it can slow things down. And there again, it will vary from case to case. Now that we're towards the end of the transaction where an offer has been accepted, now you will need to choose a title company. And what is a title company and what do they do? Well, they are a neutral third-party company that deal with title work and escrow and financing. They will collect and hold documents in trust for both parties until the completion of the transaction. And they also provide title insurance that once the property is satisfactory and clear of all liens and judgments and encumbrances or title defects, and they also satisfy contingencies. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the title company will do. And at the very end, you will appear at the title company that you choose to sign and execute the final documents on closing day. Let's talk a little bit about the escrow from the title company. The escrow works as a third-party account, which is basically an account that holds documents and funds for both parties until the end of the transaction. One of those funds that could be held would be the earnest money that's offered in the contract. And earnest money is usually around 1 to 3% of the sale purchase price, and that money will actually go towards the transaction at the end, but it's just a deposit of earnest money that could be offered, like in the contract by the buyer to actually solidify their seriousness of the transaction, or it could be required by a lender. Any funds that need to come up front before the actual closing date would be held in the trust of the escrow. Before closing, a buyer will need to get homeowners insurance, which is often required by a mortgage lender. They will also need to get their home inspection completed, which is not required, but it is highly recommended. The home inspection is one of these things that I was talking about earlier, that you have a deadline or a timeline to meet. The home inspection must be completed within 10 days of the execution of the contract. Like I said earlier, the title company will make sure that all the contingencies are satisfied or are met, because all of the contingencies have to be met before closing. The contingencies are conditions that are agreed upon between the buyer and the seller in the contract. Some of those contingencies may include, but not limited to, the mortgage, inspections, appraisal, the title contingencies, and or walkthrough. So there's many contingencies that can be written up in the contract, and the title company will make sure that all of those are met before closing. Okay, at the very beginning of this video, I was telling you that a home inspection is very important, and here's why. Because whenever you first put an offer on a house and you walk through the house, you are seeing the exterior, you're seeing the finishes of the house. But whenever you get a home inspection performed by a true home inspector, a certified home inspector, then they will kind of dig deeper into that home and look at the electrical, the plumbing, the structure, and find any issues that could pose problems in the future or later on down the line whenever you're living in the home. So a home inspection is going to protect you against hidden things that may not be visible, or they may even be unknown to the seller. So later on, if problems arise from the inspection, this also gives you negotiation opportunities so that you can possibly negotiate either those repairs being made by the seller or the price being adjusted somewhere. So home inspections are very, very important. Okay, a lender is going to order an appraisal on the home as another part of the closing process. And it's very important that you have done a CMA, or comparative market analysis, before this, because this will get you a good idea of how close you are to the actual value of the home anyway. Basically, the bank is going to use their own appraiser who goes out and does a true value on the home, and a bank is not going to loan over appraisal value to a potential homeowner. So you want to make sure that your CMA is very accurate and comparable in the market. The appraiser is also going to use a CMA, but they're going to use their own. So if they are close in comparison, then you have a good chance of your home appraising at true value. There are different situations that may come about if a house is appraised for under sale value. The seller can reduce the price of the home. The buyer can pay the difference between the appraised value and the sale price, or they can negotiate to meet in the middle somewhere. Another protection that a lender may require up front is homeowners insurance, and that is going to cover you from fire, theft, and liability. You also might want to consider flood insurance as well, because flood insurance is very important in high-risk areas. Home warranties are good for unforeseen costs or repairs in a home, and also it's good, and it may be required by some lenders, for mortgage insurance, which protects the lenders from default of the loan. Now that you're in the home stretch and you're headed towards your closing day or settlement day, you want to confirm with your lender all of your final costs and fees and escrow funds that you need to have in there, and make sure that you also are including your buyer's closing costs, which usually run between 2 and 4% of the sale price of the home. So make sure that you plan for all these, that way you don't have any unexpected or surprise cost at the end. Now you're ready for your final walkthrough, which is one of the things at the very end of the closing process. You want to schedule your final walkthrough with the homeowner, usually between a week to 1 day before closing. The less time that you have between the walkthrough and the closing is better, because you want minimal amount of time for there to be changes made from the house when you saw it last to closing day. If there are any changes to the condition, or if there are any issues that arise, then that can also be renegotiated in the terms of the sale. Once the title company and the lender have executed all the final documents, it is time for closing day. Yay! So, on closing day, the buyer will receive a settlement statement, actually prior to closing day, and that will show all the fees and costs related to the closing and needed for closing day. But on closing day, the buyer will need to bring a photo ID and any payment for down payment if it's required, and proof of their homeowner's insurance that they have acquired. Whenever you're signing all of these documents, make sure that you comprehend and understand everything. Ask questions if needed before you sign. Once it's done, it's done. And this is where once everything is signed and the documents are executed, then the transfer of ownership has occurred. The buyer will receive the keys and the seller will receive their payment, and you can call all your friends and celebrate, because you will be the proud owner of a new home. I just bought a new home. I just bought a new home. I just bought a new... Well, that concludes the closing process for buyers. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you found it enjoyable and informative, please like, comment, and subscribe below, and don't forget to look in the description for some free stuff. I have a free guide that tells you everything that you need to know for the closing process for the buyer. I'll see you next time. Don't forget, I've got some free stuff for you in the description.